I'm Ploehn. I'm City Administrator for the City of Bettendorf.
And I'm Steve Knorrek, Fire Chief with the City of Bettendorf.
And the reason we're here today to talk to you is we're about to consider a levy increase that the City Council will vote on at its March 17th meeting regarding the increase in the number of firefighters in the city. The City Council in October of 2019, during its annual goal setting, identified fire staffing and medical response from the Surrey Heights Fire Station as a top priority and gave Steve and I the direction to figure out a plan by which we could increase our staffing services and hopefully lower response times in that area. So we have, over the last several months, devised a plan to hire additional firefighters to give us 24/7 staffing at that location at Surrey Heights on the corner of Middle Road and Crow Creek Road. And we've been working with our friends and colleagues at Medic Ambulance to see if there's an opportunity to have additional ambulance staffing if that can be done as well.
We have a couple of different options available for us, and we've discussed these. One of them is to apply for the SAFER grant, which is the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response federal grant that provides some monies for staffing of a fire station or fire apparatus. And the first 2 years of the grant is 75% of the costs, and the third year is 35%. And if we would be successful in achieving being awarded this grant, then this would allow us some time to work that funding into the budget and to account for the full funding after the 3 years. Otherwise, our plan would be to hire 3 personnel in October and 3 more in February. And after some initial training of those personnel, then we would move some of the seasoned or more experienced personnel to the Surrey Heights Fire Station and train the newer individuals in with our other stations. And we would have response from 3 stations instead of just 2. Some people might ask why we need staffing at 3 stations or why I should maybe pay for staffing at a station that's not covering my area. But to that, I need to explain a little bit about how call response occurs. Each station is assigned a primary response area which is surrounding their station. But if a crew is out on a call, then a crew from the next closest station, or that happens to be next closest to the particular call, will respond to the call and handle the call. There have been many times over the past few years when one crew has already been dispatched to a call or is handling a call, and a subsequent call comes out, and then the other crew is responding across town, sometimes all the way in the other response area to cover calls. With 3 different crews staffed in the 3 locations, this provides quicker coverage of the entire city, and subsequent calls can be responded to quicker.
I think it's important to point out that we know we built this station approximately 20 years ago, anticipating that it would become a full-time station at some point. And over the last 10 years, we've built approximately 1,200 homes out there in the north and eastern portion of our city. And we've had, obviously, the recent growth with the TBK Bank Sports Complex and all of the amenities around it at Forest Grove and Middle Road. And intuitively, we knew that at some point in time we would need to do this. So this actually fits well within what we thought was going to be the plan long-term. And so by this staffing, this will give us 2 full-time firefighters 24/7 that will complement still our volunteer, resident volunteers who live at that station. So we'll have 2 people for sure in the daytime and potentially 4 in the evening, which matches the complement that we have at the other stations. So this fulfills, at least in the short term, our long-term effort to begin to staff that station and ultimately get it fully staffed as our growth continues.
We have found over the last several years that it's more and more difficult to obtain volunteer firefighters. And other organizations and fire departments are experiencing difficulty in obtaining volunteers as well. People are busier, sometimes juggling 1, 2 jobs, family, friends, other commitments, and don't either have the time or make the time to provide some service to their community, as most of the volunteers have done in the past.
So in our recommendation, we are proposing that these firefighters be brought on board, as Steve described, in October of 20 and then February of 21. And if we can get the SAFER grant, it'll help us with that funding, but we assumed that we would not get the grant. And so we propose a 30-cent levy increase. And so on a $100,000 house, that would represent about a $6.60 increase in taxes to that home. On a $150,000 house, it would represent roughly a $10.70 increase to that house. On a $241,000 house, which is the median house in Bettendorf right now, that is about $18 a year. And on a $500,000 house, I think it's like $39 is the increase there. We think that's really a pretty good bargain for the hiring of 6 new firefighters. And right now we believe it's the time to do that. Public safety is a very important, probably the #1 priority for this city council. And so the recommendation will be considered as the last part of our budget process. And the council will then vote whether or not to implement that levy increase, and then we would go about implementing the plan. And if folks have questions about that, either Steve or I would be happy to answer them. We're both listed at City Hall. You can certainly call City Hall and they'll transfer to our phones, and it's 344-4000, and we'd be happy to entertain any questions or visit with you about our plan.
And our overall goal is for the safety of the citizens. Improving response times throughout the city will help us to get to a scene quicker and to be able to handle incidents in a more timely manner.